if you want to support the show, any of the shows, either this or whichever show, I'm not on right now because this is just a blanket ad for all of them, and the website, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com. In the description for any of the episodes of Beware of Spoilers, there is the option to donate. If you don't want to donate that way, you can donate directly through the website. We do have that, mwpnews.com. And if you don't want to support that way, then going to mwpnews.com will help out because we have ads there. We don't want to keep it, where there's a lot of ads. There's a few ads. But the point is we want to make it so that way, we can sustain this for the long term. If people donate, we're never going to paywall anything, I don't think, as of right now. But if people start donating, we'll start doing cooler and cooler stuff. Like donations are how we get to cover stuff like Tribeca and other, film festivals. And, we may be able to bring on more people to help out. So if you want to help out the show and you want more content from us, by all means, even just going and giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify helps out a lot. But that's it. That's the only ad we'll have on the podcast ever. But here's whatever podcast you're going to be listening to. Good morning. And welcome to, probably by the time this goes up, afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. We're here today to talk about Doctor Who, Season 4, I don't care. Call it, you can call it Season, you can call it Season 1. I'm calling it Season 14. I don't care. Episode 5? Are we up to now? The most recent episode? I feel like it's episode 5. It's Dot Bubble is the name of the episode. And it's another Dr. Light episode. An episode that very much reminds me of Blink. The episode from season 2. Tennant's, was it Tennant's first? No, Martha was in it, so it's season 3. It's Tennant's second season. Where there is the first episode of the Weeping Angels. Let's just call it that. Make it easier for everyone. The first episode with the Weeping Angels. And the reason it reminds me of that is there is a threat that is killing people that the doctor has to help, but the doctor isn't physically there. So he and the companion have to guide the person through the episode while not being physically there. And I think that, he's a lot more hands-on in this episode than he was, if I remember correctly, in Blink. I seem to recall Blink being very, not hands-off, but kind of, it mostly is about Carey Mulligan, and I forgot who the other person was, trying to, solve the mission without having the doctor physically there. The doctor kind of warns them, and then, we move on. Here we have, it's a very, hands-on, he's trying to guide this girl through not getting eaten by these slug things that look like the weird, that slug thing from the end of Rise of Skywalker. And I think it's one of those things where it's again, a lot of the episodes this season feel like they're good, starter ideas, but just need a little bit more time to bake, as they're being produced, because, the idea is really cool. The underlying idea of this is we are taking the idea of social media use and addiction to the absolute limit, where it's instead of having to be on your phone, there's a dot that goes up in front of you and a bubble that goes around your head, and the bubble is just your friend cloud, and you're talking to your friends all the time, and meanwhile the dot is guiding you around. And the idea is so you are so enthralled with this reality that you find yourself in that you cannot, you know, you will not escape. You know, you're willing to put yourself in that, in a more permanent state, to the point where you're going to jeopardize your own life. And it's an interesting kind of approach. I think they handle it pretty cool, if I'm being honest, in this episode, where it's like, oh, so he's trapped, you know, she's got to deal with this. This is something that she has to cope with as a person, on top of also having to deal with the fact that there are these slugs that are eating people. Okay, that's cool. I think that in execution, it kind of falls apart. And I think that the end of the episode kind of comes a little out of left field. Like, and then when you watch it, you're like, oh, that does kind of make sense for what it is, where it's like, you know, I think it's meant to be a race thing. Maybe I just misread it. Maybe it was just meant to be a haves versus a have-nots, but it comes off as a race thing. I think it's meant to be a race thing. I'm not 100%. You can interpret it either way. But the point is, it's like, I think that the episode is pretty interesting in concept, and then in execution it just falls a little flat. Again, it's like the last episode, where it's like, if you think about it too hard, it starts to fall apart, and that's a little bit of a problem, especially when you're doing these harder science fiction things, like these things that are meant to be like, oh, they're a little bit headier. Like, if we look at what we've had so far this season, and I think the other thing is too, it's like, it tells a lot about where we are, like, as a society, where it's like, Susan Twist's continued appearances through every episode is kind of like the Bad Wolf in season 1 of the revival. Like, in season 1 of the revival, you have, what's it called? You know, Bad Wolf appears somewhere in every episode. And then it turns out that was, you know, that was Rose. As she, you know, she looked into the what was it, the you know, the heart of the TARDIS, or whatever it was called. But, or the time core of the TARDIS, something like that. But, like, and then that's what caused that. But it's, or in season 2, I think it was the same thing with, no, season 3 was the Master. Anytime they were in modern days, there were things about him running for Prime Minister. And that's kind of the situation where, you know, this feels a little like that. Where it's like, you know, her showing up every time, but now we've reached a point where they're calling attention to it. And it's like, oh, well, why? Like, you know, wait, that's your mom? Yeah, well, why? And it's like, well, because she was also the woman who was the ambulance, and she was also the woman who, like, the calling attention to it is just like, see, look, this is a through line, guys. This is going to come back in a major way later on. It feels not cheap or not dismissive, that's the wrong way to put it, but I guess it feels kind of like they don't trust the audience to put that together themselves. In a way that 10 years ago, 100% they would have trusted the audience to just, you know, be like, oh, there's a weird narrative through line, and then when it shows up at the end, it's like, oh, that's why that was the case. It's a little bit of a shame that they don't trust us enough to keep track of that. But it's interesting that, like, here's the thing. The fact that they're not addressing this is a little weird. Like, it's one thing in season 1 where Bad Wolf keeps showing up, and it's showing up in places where it's kind of innocuous, where you're not going to call attention to it. But Susan Twist is showing up and interacting with the characters in every episode in some way. She has some role where she's talking directly to the Doctor, or in the presence of the Doctor and Ruby, where it's like, well, why are you not acknowledging this? This is something that, like, you know, after the second time this identical woman shows up in multiple points in time, you're like, pause, this is now priority 1, because this is weird. Like, we have to figure out what's going on here, we have to address this. But they're just not, which is a little bit of an annoyance. What else have we got with this? that said, it's like, look, I would have liked the show to have done a little bit more, but, you know, or like embed that a little bit more, embed in the ending a little bit more in the episode, but, you know, it is what it is. We can't always get what we want. And that said, I am enjoying this season quite a bit. I think they're doing a great job this season so far. I would be very interested to see how this all connects as we get to the end. I still think we're headed towards something where we're going to end up with, like, a god of, like, you know, writing is going to be the, you know, the bad guy. And I feel like that's going to end up being Susan Twist. But we'll wrap up there for today. Tomorrow evening we'll be doing My Adventures with Superman. Next week we have Bad Boys for Life. 2 weeks, we have Tribeca. We're going to be talking about the new video games. That's going to be over on the Backlog Files. But until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.